Hello everyone and welcome back to my junk journal series. In this episode, we are going to be focused on the ephemera sheets or cut apart sheets in the Petals and Letters Hybrid Junk Journal Collection by Country Craft Creations. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some tips on using your scan and cut, as well as how I prep my ephemera for when I'm creating projects. So let's get started. I know a lot of you recently, when we revealed the collection, were having questions about scan and cut machines, if they're worth using, how to use them, where to get them, all the information. So I thought I would share with you just cutting out these elements. I'll also provide links to the other scan and cut videos that I have. I have an unboxing and where I talk more about the type of machine that I have. It's also the same machine that Tamara, owner of Country Craft Creations, recommends as well. That's what she uses. And so that will give you more information on a specific type of machine. And then I have two other videos that go through the settings more in depth that I'm going to show you here today. But through those collections of videos, you'll be able to get a good understanding of how to use it. I'm excited to get into it. And this ought to be a good one to try out because it will cut out all those individual sentiments that we all love. Now, granted, these are pretty easy to cut out if you're just using scissors. Okay, I have loaded my mat into my machine in between these two areas. You load your mat, and I'm going to press this center button. I'm going to use the top part of it to load my mat. The next thing we want to do is select scan. We want to do a direct cut because we're just cutting right out of the paper. We're going to select the machine. Now this is currently at 12 by 12 and color mode. If you need to change it, you just click on the wrench and you're able to make it black and white if you want. I'm going to leave it on color, and then you can also change this to be half matte or full matte. I'm going to keep the full matte and just say OK and click start. Then it runs the entire mat through the machine so that it can scan what you have on the mat. The first thing you need to do is frame the image. So I'm going to put my little stylus on these arrows. Click, so you just push down and hold and drag it up as close to the images as you can without, going into the images. What you're doing by framing the image is hiding the areas that you don't want it to focus on. If I had a scratch on my mat or debris and I left this open like that, see these lines from my mat when I cut out that baby onesie? It could see this, and then I would have to end up deleting these lines. So if we drag this up around the image as close as possible without going into it, we help to narrow the focus of the machine. So I'm just going to say OK when I have it in place, and it's going to run through all the recognition. This does take a little bit of time. Okay, the next thing we want to do, or what I like to do, is the little squiggly line. I like to smooth out the edges, so I change this smoothing low to smoothing high. I don't know, it's just a preference that I do. It's an option that you don't have to do. That's the same way with any of these features on the machine. What one function might work for one person may not work for the next person. That's just the nature of the machine and what you're putting through it. So there are other functions here. You can increase the color and tell it to look for more than 5 colors. Then it would kind of narrow down where it's looking, but we don't need to do that. And then you can also tell it to ignore objects. So If you have a small object you want it to ignore, then you would increase the height and width. If you have a large object, then you want to lower so that it recognizes the large object. Again, it depends on what you're putting through the machine and how you use the features. I'm just going to say OK. I'm going to click on Edit, and I'm going to run through this page to see if there's any what I call debris, and then I want to make sure that it's recognizing the full image and not part of an image. If it's only going to recognize part of an image, you want to delete that so it doesn't cut it out, because if it only recognized the inside of my Polaroid, then it wouldn't be cutting out the entire Polaroid. Hope that makes sense. I can show you an example in a moment. So I'm going to run through and using the selection arrows here. So we're right here on the first word, and I'm just going to move the arrow forward. Now it's on the stamp. These all look good. It's recognizing them. Okay, so it recognized a little debris right over there. I'm going to delete that. So this is the most tedious part of using a scan and cut. Look, it recognized that entire envelope, of course. It's just running through this. Whoops, I want to go back. And deleting out any of, like I said, the debris, or if it doesn't select an image properly. I've forgotten to delete when an image wasn't selected properly, and it has cut my ephemera in half. It's selecting something, but I don't actually see. Okay, I've gone through the entire screen, but I'm going to run through it one more time to make sure I haven't missed anything. I did miss something there, another little debris piece. Okay, that looks good. Okay, I'm just going to say okay now that we have it all cleaned up. And here you can actually look at the mat, and again, to make sure that it's selecting the entire image and not just part of it. That looks good. We're going to select cut and then start. Next thing you do is hit OK, and at this point you can eject it and take it to your table. Okay, I'm back at my table, and we're going to see the reveal. Woohoo! A clean cut sheet. That's awesome. Now each scan and cut comes with this little scraper or whatever it is, but I like to use it to pick up the images. It does a really great job of getting right underneath the paper. And in fact, I like using this on the Cricut as well. But all of these are cutting out so wonderful. And look at all of our words. It did a fantastic job at cutting everything out. It even kind of rounded the sides, which I didn't have it planned that way, but I'm kind of liking it. It did its own design. So a scan and cut can really save some time on cutting things out. I know a lot of people like to fussy cut because it's a little bit therapeutic. Me, I'm not a fussy cutter. I don't think I do a very good job of it, so that's why I don't like it. But for those that don't like to fussy cut, this is a great way to do it. Now, I did the same process with the rest of the ephemera sheets. For the tags, everything came out really well, except for it didn't recognize this particular tag. I'm not sure why. I may have told it not to cut it. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention at one moment when I was clicking through getting rid of debris, so I may have accidentally told it not to cut that one. But otherwise, it cut the rest of these out. Now, I did, of course, cut these all together as one image, but that's okay. They were so close together, it wouldn't have known to cut in between. But it's also okay because if I want to make two of these a little booklet, I can, and then just cut off the other one. So it gives you options. I like that it did all the fancy cuts for me. And all I then have to do is take a little hole punch and punch my holes in all my tags. Here's how the little flower came out, or the rosebud, I guess. But those turned out good as well. For this ephemera sheet with the pockets, it cut out really well also. The only one it didn't cut out was this first pocket piece. It really kept recognizing all the inner pieces, which when it does that, it doesn't make sense to me because I have a line going all the way around the image, and this is one image. So why it picks up individual pieces, it's like, I mean, that's great. It's got great detail. Maybe I needed to lower a setting or make a setting higher, but I didn't really fiddle with it too much. I just kind of put it in and cut them out. But just know that you do have settings on a scan and cut that you can change to help with cutting things out. Because I only have one set of all of these and I don't really have the luxury of playing around with the settings to test it, I wanted to make sure it wasn't cutting out just individual pieces, so I elected to not cut this image out. So everything else came out really well. My pockets look good, my little rosebud, and my little baby tag. This came out as one image as well because I have it so close together. But here again, all I got to do is just cut, and I'm good to go, or cut here and make this a back-to-back booklet, which would be fun too. This I can definitely fussy cut out. Super easy image. Here is the last set of ephemera, and I must say this was the most difficult one of the 4 sheets, which really doesn't make sense to me because I tested this one specifically before we sent it to the printer, and everything cut out perfectly fine. So again, this may work and cut out everything perfect on your scan and cut, but for some reason tonight for mine, it did not. But it's all still good. I still have elements to work with. So let me tell you a little bit about what I'm talking about. So if we lift this up, oh, I'm gonna lose all my, you'll see that all of these pieces cut out good. There's my little wax seal, my little envelopes. I love this little secret box. My tabs, my washi, the large Polaroid came out okay. My stamp, my key, this little guy. So here's what we have left. Let's talk about this Polaroid since it's going all over the place. For some reason, it picked up the inner line around the image. It also picked up the outer line. So it was trying to do some weird cut. And what it ended up doing was cutting out the center. So I might be able to salvage this, or just take the inner image, cut this off, maybe cut it down a little bit and make my own Polaroid out of it. So this is not lost to me. I can still use it. Again, when I'm showing you this, I'm showing you so that you understand that sometimes the machine does cut things out improperly, even when it looks like it's going to cut out right. Just like my little key here, for some reason, it didn't cut out the rest of the bow correctly. Then I think this was loose on my mat and it lifted up and got a little bit of a wrinkle in there, but that's okay. You can always straighten that out, right? But I don't know why it would cut out one key perfectly and not the other when they're the same exact image, just mirrored. So, you know, that's weird. My washi, kind of the same thing. It cut all the other washi out perfectly. I have a black line around them to make sure that it did. But yet I had to delete it because it was picking up the individual pieces. Like it would pick up this section, then this section, and then this is one section. Well, when you see it picking up individual sections of one image, you know it's not going to cut out right. So I told it to not cut this out so I could just fussy cut it out. For this tab, it did cut it out, but for some reason it looked like it just stopped right here. So I just need to finish cutting that one out and it'll be fine. And it didn't recognize this for some reason. It might have been the tape I had the corner that was causing some interference. Who knows, right? You may put it in and it will recognize it. But I can easily fussy cut this image out as well. And I may have deleted the image recognition on this one by accident. So that stamp didn't get cut out. But it did cut out the one next to it. So that might have been me. But there is how they cut out using a scan and cut machine. Now, even when I run into issues like this, I still think it's worth it. I did all of that in what, 15 minutes or so? Maybe a little bit longer? Otherwise, it would have taken an hour or so to cut each one of these things out individually. So to use a scan and cut versus fussy cutting is really a personal preference. I just wanted to come on and share with you the outcome of using the scan and cut with these images for the Petals and Letters collection. And, you know, I will be paying attention to this as we continue to make more and more collections to make sure that they are cutting out properly. I did test these before it went to the printer. So again, this whole page cut out perfectly fine before it went to the printer. So it could just be temperamental. Maybe it didn't feel like cutting anymore. Now that my ephemera is all cut, I'm ready to ink the edges. Now you can certainly use these without inking them, but I do find that it helps because when it gets cut, the white edges really do show. So I'm going to be using Ranger Distress Oxide Vintage Photo, and then I also have Black Soot Distress Oxide out here as well. And I'm just using a regular sponge dauber, but you could use the finger daubers, which is great to get into little nooks and elements, as well as brushes are also a good way to add ink to your elements. And what I'm really doing is just knocking back the white so it doesn't shine through so much. And that looks better already. For the tags, I'm going to go ahead and punch the holes in them as well. I have like a pinhole, I have the regular hole punch, and then one that does 1/8 of an inch. I think I'll use that one for this project. And now that is ready. If I wanted to, I could cut out some other color cardstock and put on the back sides of these, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I'll wait to see how I'm going to use them in the journal. If you find it's too hard to use the daubers to ink the edges of your words, another thing you could do is just take them and run them alongside the pad in the ink pad. Now your fingers might get a little bit more inky, but it works all just the same. For the words, I want to keep them as white as possible, so I'm not going to put any ink around them, I don't think. Let's see. Let's see what happens if I do. I guess that's okay. Once you have all of your elements inked, and you think you might want to have one of them with an offset on it, it's easy to put this back into your scan and cut and have it create an offset for you. So what I do is I glue the piece down onto some scrap cardstock. I'm using black artisan cardstock. And then I'm going to put this back into my scan and cut. So I loaded the element onto my mat and I have it loaded into my sheen. I'm going to do the same steps. Scan, direct cut. I'm going to hit the little machine icon. And here is where I can hit the wrench and change this to be black and white because there are no colors on this element. And I can also change this to be half of the mat rather than it scanning the full mat. Just going to say OK and start. Okay, I'm going to once again move the arrows up to the image as close as possible. But not too close. We want to leave enough room for it to be able to cut and offset. There we go. And I'm going to hit preview. And OK. Now I'm going to select this little image right here, which is the outline distance or the offset. What I usually do is just go up to the first setting that's on here, 0.04. You can go higher, but it will make a larger offset around your image, and I like a thin one. So I'm going to select OK. OK again. And I'm going to select cut and start. It's all done. I'm just going to say OK. And if we come down to our mat, pull out the element, and now we have a nice little border around it. For these items that come out as one large piece, I'm going to go ahead and cut these down because I know I'm going to want them individually. And I'm going to do the same for my tags. I'm not going to use, if I create a booklet, I'm going to do it a little bit different than doing the tags back to back. Those are super easy to get prepared with them all being connected, quite frankly, rather than have a cut out each individual one. And now I can just finish inking on the one side. Again, I'm going to use the 1/8 inch hole punch for this. Now, when it comes to items like this, we're going to score them. So I'm pulling out my scoreboard. I guess I'll just use this. I usually use this scoreboard for my personal journaling, but this is going to be a perfect size to use this for. So if you look at the envelope, you'll notice that there are lines, very faint, to show you where to score. I did that on purpose so it would make it a little bit easier for us. So then you just line that line up with one of the scoring lines in your scoreboard or your ruler, and scoring tool can be used as well. Now we can fold up and burnish and fold in our sides. And fold over the top. And now we have a nice little envelope. Now we could go ahead and glue this shut, but I may want to add some type of pattern paper in here later, or I may want to add this to my journal in a different way. So right now I'm going to leave this open, but it is all prepped and ready. And we can kind of do the same thing with our pockets. Go ahead and get them ready by just scoring down the lines there. Now there are actually two ways that you can use these pockets. If you want a more dimensional pocket, you can use these scoring lines on the sides, score, and then burnish. And then your pocket is all ready to go into your journal. Or you can, let me find another pocket, here we go. Or you can take and cut off these hinges and make this more of a flat pocket. And now this can just go on your journal page or even on the back of one of these tags, and then you can slip your little tag right in there. So it all depends on how you want to use these pockets. For a more dimensional, leave the hinges on. For a more flat look, cut the hinges off. So I hope you enjoyed learning a few tips and tricks on how to prepare your ephemera for our junk journal. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next time as we go into the next part of creating our journal.